Good evening and welcome to the September 9th, 2021 Committee on Committees. And I'd just like to call this meeting to order. Do a roll call. I'm Sam Bruder, I'm the chair, I'm here. And I see my esteemed colleague, Terry Berthelot. Hello. See if, looking at the, hold on, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the minutes from the last meeting. Sarah Ann, was there anybody who wanted to speak from the public?
No, not tonight.
In that case, I'd like to make a motion to approve the August 12th, 2021 meeting minutes, as long as there are no edits that had to be made. Seconded, and all in favor, raise your hand. Great, it's unanimous. And next up on the agenda, we have David Stevens for a candidate interview for a Commission on Aging. Good evening, Mr. Stevens.
Hello there, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm well.
I just wanted to, before we get into the hard questions, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about the process where, we do the interview here. We'll do a vote for recommendation for the position to the town council. At the next meeting, it will then be voted on by the full town council itself. Any questions?
No.
Okay, great. And thank you so much for making the time to come here. I know for our last meeting, we had a lot of power failure and everything like that. So I'm glad you could make it to this one where hopefully we won't have the same thing. Though we had the tornado warnings all this morning.
Yep.
And so I see in your application that you've been a longtime resident of Mansfield.
My parents moved to town in 1968. I attended E.O. Smith, transitioned into UConn, worked in town for a period of time, managed the only Hardee's on campus, worked for Burger King for about 20 years, retired from that, went into manufacturing, went to Wendy's, and then I went into senior living, I don't know, I'm trying to think, probably 10 years ago now.
Okay, great. What makes you want to volunteer for the Commission on Aging?
I've been a long-term resident of the town of Mansfield, and I think I have a good understanding of the town, and I think I have some knowledge and expertise in terms of the aging population and seniors because of my role, my current role, and being on various boards. And I think I'd like the opportunity to help figure out how the town will support the elderly in the years to come. I look at myself and I'd like to stay in town as long as possible, and I don't know if it's doable right now. Housing, there's a whole series of factors. But I think there are ways that we could support the elderly in town and make sure there's affordable housing.
Great. Councilor Berthelot, do you have any questions?
Sure. You referred to your professional role. You're an executive director for a senior program. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. After I left Wendy's, I took a huge cut in pay because I really wanted to do something different. So I worked for the Macaulay, which was part of Catholic Health East, managed an independent living community, 2 buildings, 228 residents. Did that for just over 7 years. Catholic Health East merged with another organization, and my role was eliminated, which was great. Gave me some time to spend with my father before he passed. And then I had the opportunity to join Brookdale, which is a large for-profit senior living organization. They asked me to manage a small 80 rooms, 80 apartment community in South Windsor. So I've been with Brookdale since October of 2019. Assisted living with a small memory care unit. Actually, it's very interesting because the community is the closest assisted living community to Storrs. So we have a number of residents from Storrs, Mansfield area that are in our community. So I do everything from manage the finances, the day-to-day operations, to drive the bus, to whatever is needed to support the community.
Sure. And can't agree with you more of how important it is to think about our aging community now, particularly with the baby boomers growing older as a cohort, but recognizing we have aging infrastructure, we have aging houses, we don't really have a transportation system that's going to suit their needs. Where do you think what would be the first place? Where should we look first? What's the most pressing need, do you think?
I think the most pressing need would be to figure out it. Let me try it this way. For me, I think organizations, towns, businesses are successful if they partner with other organizations to help each other. So in my case at work, we've partnered with an organization called Genesis. So Genesis is going to be actually in our community doing PT and OT. So they will be physically there 5 days a week, their equipment interacting with residents. The point is, it's a partnership. So I think the first thing I would think we would do is look towards partnerships with other organizations. I know Masonic Care has a piece of land. They were trying to do something. I know JP got tied up with Mystic and that kind of got put on hold. But I think really look for a partnership to try and figure out how we could come up with a win-win so there was affordable housing for the elderly in town. I don't think you can do it alone. I think there really has to be partnerships to help make it happen.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. And certainly thank you for volunteering and for joining us this evening.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us?
No, actually, John Reason has been very good about talking me through the process. He's been a long-term member of we go to the same church, so he and Grace have been good about talking me through the process. So no, I'm good. Great.
I didn't have anything else. And if you're more than welcome to stay on. It's a public hearing. We've got a couple other things we got on the agenda, or you're more than welcome to sign off, whatever you feel like doing.
I think I will sign off and let you join your meeting.
Nice
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. So that brings us to the next agenda item of old business, which there isn't any that I know of or that I see. And then the new business of the proposed revised cemetery committee charge. Our fabulous town clerk has been gracious enough to attach that to the packet, and it's on my page 9. 12. And Sarah, go ahead if you wanted to. I was going to ask you a question.
I was going to ask if you wanted me to speak to it.
Yeah, please.
Okay, happy to do it. So, as you probably know, I staff the cemetery committee. Cemetery committee did pass approval of this proposed revised charge all the way back in February 2020, and it was just before the pandemic hit, and it just became not a priority for everybody, and kind of got lost in the shuffle of things. So we're bringing it back. First step is, of course, for you all to review it and approve of their approval, and then for the council to approve the full revision. So what you have in your packet, copy of the draft minutes where the cemetery committee did approve that proposed draft. You have the current charge is in effect now dated October 8th, 1973. And you have the proposed revised charge. So there's a couple of notable changes, and if you'd like me to, I'll just kind of walk through the highlights of what's different. Okay. So the first is a proposed change from cemetery committee to cemetery advisory board. The thought here is that it's a bit different now these days than the original intention, in that it's really even more so advisory than it is a board, a committee with any powers of any real action. So the advisory piece really seemed like an important addition. There are some general updates just to match present day responsibilities. For example, we removed from the old one, there was wording about providing assistance in the maintenance and care of cemeteries. That's something that the members have not done in very, very many years. And that type of work is contracted out to professionals. The committee does review quotes and review the abilities of contractors to perform this specialized work, this taking care of a cemetery. You're talking about your lawn maintenance and your like spring and fall cleanups, branches, things of that nature, is actually specialized. All of the small areas you have to work around and be very careful of what you're tending to. And then snow plowing, they review those contractors and contracts as well before proposing acceptance of working with those particular contractors. They make an advisory motion to the town to work with certain vendors. And that's after competitive bid process and all that. So anyway, they don't actually get their hands dirty in the cemeteries. That's the long way of saying that.
Sarianne, can I jump in just with a question?
Sure.
So that second paragraph as a standalone just doesn't make sense to me. I think so I hear what you're saying. It used to be that, I think I understand that the committee actually engaged in that behavior. And no, that's no longer the case. But it starts with such operation, and I don't understand like who's the actor, what the action is.
Okay.
Almost looks like
so
a continuation of the sentence before.
it is. I think, Terry, that it would be more appropriate for that sentence to be a continuation, as Sam just said, of the paragraph above it. The such operation is in reference to the operation mentioned in the previous paragraph. I'll just give you a moment to take a look at that.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
really
yeah.
Defining the parameters of what we mean in terms of what they are expected to advise on. They're expected to advise on these particular
Gotcha.
items.
I think it would be better if it did go with the first paragraph rather than as two paragraphs.
I agree. We'll make that change. Okay. We also added in that they would advise on rules, regulations, and fees for the cemeteries. So what we have right now are a set of rules and regulations and fees that were in fact actually developed by the cemetery committee along with the sexton some number of years ago. But it's not formally written anywhere who is supposed to come up with these rules and these regulations. So I think it would be good to officially give them this responsibility, since they are our local group of experts, so to speak, in this particular area. As a side note, sorry. Yeah.
I wonder if it would be clearer if it just said recommend rules regulations and fees rather than develop and recommend, only because develop seems to imply that they become the rules, where recommend makes it clear, recommend, maybe even better, recommend to the town council.
And I had a question about recommending the fees and such to the town council. Do we set any others for fees?
The first thing that comes to mind are solid waste fees, right? Those go through you all.
Oh, that's right.
And
Perfect.
when we set fines, whenever an ordinance comes through, it's recommended to us, and then we're the group that actually votes on it and makes it into a live ordinance.
Right.
Thank you.
So basically, my concern here is that we have this set of rules and regulations and fees that are being used, and they have been so for decades, but they are not actually.
They've not been gone through the. Yeah.
They should be brought to us, yeah.
They should be brought to you, so that's why I thought it important to put it in here. Make sure it does come to you. And so the side note is that after this is done, then I'll be working with the committee to actually take the existing rules and regulations, and I want to put it into an ordinance format and actually bring the rules and regulations to you as an ordinance along with the fees, so it's passed into Mansfield's code and made official. Yeah, okay, good. We added snow removal as one of the operation and maintenance pieces because that has to be done, and we've been doing that for years. And actually, that captures the major changes on here. Everything else is really the same. The makeup of the group works really well.
Can I ask a couple more questions?
Yeah.
My other question is, or a little bit of concern, is limiting membership of this group to those who are knowledgeable in cemetery operation, maintenance, and/or preservation. Like, I can see why it's key to have some members, but I can also see how that could become a real club, and that there might be folks who have maybe a different religious background or a different idea about burials that might be locked out just because of that group of people who has that history together locally. It can't be that large a group, but it seems like the door needs to be somewhat open for people who may not have cemetery experience but have experience from culturally. That's important to recognize, so we don't get sort of locked into thinking our cemeteries only have to, could reflect sort of one religious background or sort of cultural background.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say I had the same thought in terms of limiting only people who are knowledgeable in cemetery operation, maintenance, and or preservation. I didn't take it where Terry did, but I certainly, I was thinking of proposing, or at least discussing, the idea of, or somebody who's an enthusiast, something like that. So it's not just like, I remember we recently had an applicant come through and get interviewed for the cemetery committee who was new to town, but he had a wide range of background in cemetery preservation. So it worked. It certainly works for that. Maybe they don't have a problem finding, members that would fit this criteria, but
maybe we could phrase it as ideally some members of the committee should be knowledgeable in cemetery operation, maintenance, and or preservation.
I think so first of all, I would say that the spirit doesn't intend to be exclusionary, and the folks that we have on the committee definitely do vary in terms of passion versus actual, experience with things. That said, I think that it should be captured in the charge. I agree with you, and I feel like we did something similar to this with the Human Services Advisory Committee and how we worded, of course, now I can't put my hands on it. Oh, here we go. Oh, yeah, so we say in the Human Services Advisory Committee, so people who are advocates for or consumers of, so maybe this could be something like, could be people who are passionate about or have passion for, or who are advocates for cemetery preservation, something like, I mean, I can play with that unless you right now have a phrase that you're.
So I actually have a worry about even like the focus on preservation. So I was just in Jamaica, and the cemeteries in Jamaica are radically different than the cemeteries here in Mansfield. And as much as I love this cemetery, I'm a cemetery buff. I think they're really, really cool and interesting places. But I also recognize that we're changing. And I want our cemeteries, because they're public, to be places where folks feel like they could bury their families without sort of needing to look like all the other plots. And so I hear preservation in the sense of making sure that they're safe and that they're well kept up, but I also fear preservation could be, so they all look like they belong to the Congregational Church. I think being mindful of that's important, that there'll be people in our community who may have different ideas of what a cemetery should look like, and then our cemeteries may be changing because of that.
Sure. Yeah, I don't get the impression that the intent of preservation is that way, but I can see how, to your point, it could be open to interpretation. This group, certainly from my observation, is about, stones that are crumbling or cracked or need to be cleaned off, that type of preservation. Yeah, okay. So what I could do, if you're comfortable with it, is I can kind of take from our conversation and make these few edits and then bring it back for another look. There's no rush.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
I'm on board with what Terry's saying in terms of wanting to, if I'm saying it wrong, Terry, let me know. But wanting to keep the preservation in terms of like the historical stones and so that they don't deteriorate, but certainly not looking to have everything be uniform and preserved in that sense.
Sure. So, I think there's going to need to be some distinction in terms of we're preserving what already exists, and that's what the preservation means. So certainly we have a number of inactive cemeteries in town that are not going to see any more burials, so those need to be preserved as the way that they are. So yeah, let me think on it and play with it, and I'll bring something back.
It may even be something that we can ask the Human Rights Committee to review, for language in that regard. Commission.
Okay. Right. Okay. Okay, great. That's all that I have on that. On a separate topic for what you're about to transition to, I wanted to remind you that we had an applicant okay, you're nodding your head, you know where I'm going with this. Okay.
I'm assuming that you're referring to the fact that we have 2 candidates for the Commission on Aging appointment?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Both of them extremely qualified and would add a great deal. I wonder if we need to think about the current makeup to get the balance. One person being very much a consumer-oriented person, and the other having the professional background. Do you have a sense, Sarah Ann, or can we look at the current committee? Is there a way of?
I know
can tell. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
I was just gonna say, I know that we have the email with the recommendation from I believe it was from the chair.
I believe it is, yeah.
John Risden.
Reason, yes, yes.
Horrible with names. And he had sent a email putting in his nomination for David Stevens.
I read that as just support, though, not saying this person's better than that. This is the person.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
So I can't, if you would find it helpful, I can tell you the names of the folks who are currently appointed. I do not know if they are professionals in the field or consumers of services or not. Would you like me to do that?
I think that might be helpful.
Okay. So John Reason, you already know. We have Nancy Trorick Smith. In parentheses, there's Holinko after it, so I believe that means she's a resident of Holinko Estates. Martina Wharton, Joanne Sousa, Barbara Vaughn, who is also on HRC, Devin Hawk, Wilfred Beagle, and that's all for members.
I think I remember interviewing Mr. Beagle a couple years ago for this.
Yes, I'm seeing this now, and I actually think they have had a member pass in recent history, because my spreadsheet is showing there's actually 2 vacancies, and that would be a more recent vacancy. Actually, I think we just found out this week.
So it could be that we can,
Appoint them both.
do you think we can go ahead and do that?
I would like if you could afford me 2 minutes, because I really want to confirm.
You can recess of 2 minutes.
I'm sorry, I'm
Take a
setting a
recess.
timer for 2.
No,
Yeah,
no.
we can take.
For recess.
Yeah, that would be great. I want to locate this an email just to confirm.
And then while you're doing that, I'm going to talk to Terry if that's okay.
Are we off of the, are we still recording?
We are still recording. Do you need me to? No, I mean, it's up to you. I don't know.
Not what I'm going to talk about. My original thought for whichever one we voted on for recommendation was to ask the other one to possibly be, consider themselves for the housing trust committee that we're going to be creating. Because we got to start thinking about membership of that. And I certainly like the fact that okay, thank you. 10-year-old doing homework. I like the fact that both of them, if I'm remembering correctly, I'd have to look at my notes from a month ago, but both of them touched on housing as a need in Mansfield, and I like that, because everything you've said, Terry, has made it so that I think that should be a priority when that housing trust gets put together.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay. I have confirmation. We have 2 vacancies.
All right, let's fill them both.
All right.
There we go. So I'd like to reconvene the Committee on Committees. It is 6:31. And in looking at the agenda, we left off with the Cemetery Committee charge, which may be turning into the Cemetery Advisory Board. And we have appointments. Jerry, you want me to do these? You want to do them? How would you like to do it?
Either way is fine. I'm pulling up my, so let's see.
Did you want me to explain? There is there wasn't any backup material on this, but Jennifer Nucci, you just recently appointed her to the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners as a tenant representative. And
Right.
the Housing Authority Board contacted me and asked if she could be actually made into a regular position commissioner, because she is going to be moving out. She will no longer be a tenant there. And they really like her. So that's why this proposed change in her status.
I can make the motion.
Thank you, Terry.
I move to recommend to the town council the appointment of Jennifer Nucci. We're moving her from resident representative commissioner to commissioner on the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners with a term ending October 31st, 2023.
Seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous.
I move to recommend to the full town council the appointment, the movement of Barbara Vaughn from alternate member to full member on the Human Rights Commission with a term ending July 1st, 2023.
Seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous.
So I don't have the names for the Commission on Aging. I have the first name. I have tonight's. So go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. The second is Sylvie Delamotte.
Yes.
I'll do them together since they'll be the same term. Is that okay?
Yep.
I move to recommend to the full town council the appointment of Sylvie Delatanti and David Stevens to the Commission on Aging for a term ending September 30th, 2023.
Seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous.
You want me to do the Solid Waste Advisory Committee?
I can do those.
Go ahead.
Right. So I make a motion to recommend to the town council reappointments to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, Theodore Buskey and Rita Kornblum for terms ending September 1st, 2024.
Seconded.
All in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. I make a recommendation. I'd like to make a motion to make a recommendation to the town council. The Housing Code Board of Appeals, David Spencer, Will Beagle, and Charles Wiggins as an alternate for terms ending October 13th, 2024.
Seconded.
All in favor, raise your hand. There we go, unanimous. Great. And I think that's it for votes, unless you had any others.
Just one note, so your actions that you took tonight, it's not likely that it's gonna be on the council agenda coming up this Monday, because this is one of those timelines where it's a tight turnaround. However, because we didn't have a second council meeting in August, your actions from your previous Committee on Committees meeting is going to be on the council agenda, so
Perfect.
to get ahead of any confusion.
And do you know if they're in line to be on the consent agenda?
They are in line to be on the consent agenda.
Perfect.
Was
And I
that-
know that plays out, in the meeting, if anyone wants to take it off, but.
Good. Okay.
Well, Terry and I are gonna have another meeting in about 25 minutes, but you're done.
Thank you.
Is it- Sam, I wouldn't mind chatting with you about that meeting.
Okay.
Do you want to, can I call you or do you want to call me?
I'll call you right. I'll do
Okay.
the motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All in favor, raise your hand. There we go. And adjourn at 6:36. No longer recording.